What a great way to start a creative conference, but to create something of your own. That's my goal for this. I want you to have fun. My first goal is that you have fun, most important. Second goal is that you take something home with you that you're happy with. But that's secondary to having fun, right? The creative process is about enjoying the process. It's the journey getting there. It's not the end result. So keep that in mind while you're working this morning. Super excited to be here, a little bit nervous. I flew all the way from San Diego to be here with you. I can't believe it, pinch me. I'm actually on the other side of the world in front of a group of creative people. It's fantastic. My name's Theresa Jackson. I do a little bit of everything. I bet most of you do too. You can relate to that. I'm a graphic artist. I run my own graphics business. I teach classes. Primarily, I teach Photoshop, Lightroom, digital darkroom type classes. I'm also a photographer. But I love the mobile apps that Adobe has developed, and I've been using them a lot for my own personal creative space. And Adobe Draw is my favorite. We're going to be doing a project in Adobe Draw today. For those of you that haven't used Adobe Draw, it's a vector drawing program. So think of it as drawing with markers. So if you wanted to draw and shade with a pencil or that kind of feel or charcoal, you would use Adobe Sketch, which is a companion to Photoshop. So Adobe Sketch is drawing in pixels. Adobe Draw is drawing in vector. So we're going to create a coloring book type style drawing today. And it's easy. So fear not. If you have minimal drawing skills, you can do this project and come up with something that you're going to be happy with, because we're going to trace a photo. I also provided paper textures for all of you that we'll start with, and we'll be using these textures to create some background graphics. So they're fun. We want these drawings to be really fun. So I have a couple TAs here with me that I want to introduce. Carrie, her hand raised, and Jesus. They're friends of mine. They volunteered to help me. Aren't they awesome? So my goal is to just run through the project and let them help you. So if you get stuck, something isn't working, you get behind, raise your hand and they'll come help you. And there's a couple sections where we're just gonna draw, and I'll tell you how much time you have to just draw. And then I might walk around the room and help you during that time too. So let's get started. Can you switch me over to my iPad? One other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is a technical challenge that I haven't been able to solve, but it's a little hard to follow somebody demonstrating with a mobile device because there's no mouse, right? And there's no apps that I've been able to find that can track the finger touch, and the one that the system has doesn't let draw work when I run it. So I do have a laser pointer, and at times I might point up to where I'm telling you to work. So just be patient with that. It might be a little bit hard to follow. I'm going to try to be really descriptive about what I'm doing. If you have taken a look at the workbook, we're going to follow the workbook with the exception of the very, very start. Instead of jumping into Adobe Capture, we're actually going to photograph the piece of paper with the camera app, and we'll start with that. And for some reason, I did not bring enough for me to have a sheet of paper. So if I could borrow yours, I'm going to actually borrow this to demonstrate with. So everybody has a different pattern. These are going to be the backgrounds of your drawings. Now, you may not like the pattern at your desk. Don't worry about it. Just photograph it for practice. I've already captured all of these and provided them to you in a library. So when you get into your drawing, you'll have access to everything that's here in the room. But for now, just take the one that's in front of you and pick up your iPad. Mine's all tied in, so hopefully we can get this to work. And then launch the camera app. There's a shadow on mine, so let's see. But I did pre-do these so that if we don't get the greatest look. So just take your camera, frame it so that we're not seeing my, is it because I picked it up and moved it? We lost my projection. So while he's working on that, everybody knows how to take a camera with, or a picture with an iPad. Frame the paper so that it fills the whole frame, which is what I'm doing here that you can't see. And then tap the big button to take a picture of it. Do you think it's because it's in the camera mode? Yeah. Let's see if that comes back. It came back, okay. So if you had any problems, here, you can take a picture of this now. Like I said, this is kind of for practice. If it doesn't come out good, that's okay. So now we're actually going to get into the workbook, and I'm going to follow along with it so that I stay on target as well. And in the workbook, we start with Adobe Capture. So I have my Adobe apps collected. Wow, okay. Whew, scaring me here. You should find the Capture is the, what did I do with my laser pointer here that I just said I had? I have too much stuff up here. It's the one in the upper left, the pink one. So tap on Adobe Capture to launch it. And we went through all the apps on your iPad, so they all should start in on this page right here. Note that this application can capture a lot of different types of assets for your creative projects. For today's session, we're just going to capture a shape. And we are on the shape. If you look, I really need to find that. Maybe it dropped on the floor. I said I had a laser pointer. Aha. It's tucked under here. Okay. So if you look across the top, we have shapes, patterns, colors, brushes, and looks. We're just going to do a shape. So tap the big green plus at the bottom. And you'll notice by default, and now it's black, because it's gone into the camera, and my iPad's sitting right here on the desk. But if I pick up my iPad, let me go back to this, you'll see the room, right? This is the default way that Capture opens and the way that it's always demonstrated, and it's really frustrating to use Capture this way because you're trying to get a good look while you're lining up your picture. So I had you pre-take it, and it's not showing here. Tap in the upper right-hand corner. Please come back. Oh, if I set it down, I better not touch my iPad. We're going to keep this working. So tap in the upper right-hand corner of Capture, and that'll bring up all these options of images that you can access. And you can see, you can get into your Creative Cloud from here. If you are a photographer who uses Lightroom Mobile Sync, you can get to your Lightroom images through here. We're not going to do that today, but I just want to mention that because I think that is so fabulous that I have access to all my photographs here. So select Camera Roll by tapping on it. And you should, I have obviously tons of images in my, because I've been outside seeing. And you probably just have the portrait and the paper. So it's much easier to use Capture this way because you have a still image and it's not moving all the way around. There's a couple features here to understand. This is light to dark. This is your slider. So as you scroll up, you can get a darker look, and as you scroll down, you can get kind of an outline look. The other really cool thing about using Capture this way is sometimes I will capture a pattern like this more than once, so I have multiple versions of it. So I might do one that has outlines, and I might do one that has solid fills. So just pick something that looks good. I'm going to take this up kind of high so we can see that it kind of has a bunch of like scummy dots in here. This magic wand looking button, this is fairly new for Capture. This is a clean. If you tap that, it should go through. It's taking its little time. And it cleaned up a lot of that. That's a really fabulous new feature they put in. And it works better when you're on a still image. So from here, I could even adjust my light to dark. So once you're, wow, every time I touch my iPad, it goes away. He's going to try a different connector. So once you're happy with that, hit the big green button, which will take you to the next panel that gives you a preview of it. And then you can just tap Next in the upper right-hand corner to go to the next page. And I'll get, okay, that looks like it's working better. Good, awesome. Thank you for your help. So I'm going to hit the big green button. And this is where you could clean it up. You could erase and deselect. We don't need to do any of that. So I'm going to tap the Next in the upper right-hand corner. And now it's drawing vector art. Isn't that awesome? Honestly, how many Illustrator users do we have in the room? Fantastic. So you've all used Image Trace before? This is better. I swear they should put this in Illustrator because it does a really fabulous job. This button here on the bottom, don't turn it on. It smooths it out and it takes forever, and I don't think it really does anything to benefit but slow you down. So hit the Next button, and this is where we're going to save it. And it's going to get saved to a Creative Cloud library, and by default it goes into the My library, which comes with a Creative Cloud account. All of your workstations were set up with Creative Cloud accounts for today's session. So you're all on your own account. So just go ahead and let it go there. You could name it. We don't need to name it for this. And then tap at the bottom where the blue button is, and that'll save the shape. And you should see it show up in your library. So now we're ready to get started with our drawing. You can tap the home button, the actual physical button on your iPad, to close out of Capture. And I'm actually going to have you close down all your apps before you start drawing, because I find that Adobe Draw can be a little bit of a resource hog. Now, you all have better iPads here than I actually have, so you might not have this problem. But I'm kind of in the habit of double tapping the home button, and you tap and you swipe up. That shuts down your apps. And so I'm in the habit of doing that before I launch Draw, and I have fewer problems with it when I do. So after you do that, you're going to launch Adobe Draw. This is the orange here, so just tap on it to launch it. And obviously, mine's full of projects because I use Draw all the time, and you guys all have brand new tablets. There's no projects in there. We're going to tap the orange plus in the lower right-hand corner to start a new project. And they just recently added this feature, this new format, where you can customize your canvas size. That's brand new, like in the last week. But for today's session, we're just going to do a square 2100 pixel by 2100 pixel. So tap on that. But also keep in mind that we're drawing in vector, which is infinitely scalable. So it says 2100 pixels, but it doesn't really matter because it can be any size you want it. Okay, so if you're following along in the workbook, we're on page 4. We're going to place the portrait image that you took when you came in the room. Let's take a quick look around the UI here before we do that. Our brushes are on the left-hand side, and we're going to primarily just use default settings. I mean, there's create brushes here, and you could get creative and edit them, but there's not a lot that we need to do for this project. Up here, this first icon here, the curve with the arrow, that's your undo. I'm going to show you a gesture to do undo as well. And this is where you get to the shapes. This is where we'll find the shape that we created with Adobe Capture. This third one hides your layers. These are your layers on the right-hand side. And this is how you send it out. We'll do that at the end. And this double arrow here in the corner is where you will hide. Like, you could tap that right now, and you'll see that it will hide your UI, which is really nice when you're drawing because you have a real clean space. And you'll see that it's still there in gray. You could tap that to bring it back. Now, I like to scale my canvas down before I place my image so that I can see the boundaries of the canvas. So to scale, not to scale, to zoom. To zoom in and out on your canvas, you use a two-finger gesture. So put 2 fingers right on the tablet and pinch them together and spread them apart. You can practice that. So pinching them together, we're zooming out so you can see the whole canvas. You scroll out, we're zooming in. So zoom out so you can see the whole canvas here. And now we're ready to place our image. So we want to create a new layer to place the image, and these are the layers. It comes with the background and a draw layer, plus the tap, and that'll give you the option. And right now, I'm not even using my pencil. You can actually do all the stuff I'm doing here with your fingers. When we get into drawing, though, you're going to want to use the pencil. When you tap the plus, you have an option to add a draw layer or an image layer, and we're going to add an image layer. So tap the image layer, and notice again, this is a fabulous feature. When you came in the room, there was draw projects cycling through. Those were a bunch of draw projects I've done. I did a whole series of animals. I live very close to the safari park in San Diego, which is like a world famous zoo. So I take a lot of pictures of animals. They have copyrights on those animals. I'm not allowed to sell those photographs, so I draw them because that, now they're mine. What's beautiful is that I can get to the images in my Lightroom catalog under where it says My Files in Creative Cloud because I use Lightroom Mobile Sync. Again, I don't have time to demonstrate all that today, but for those of you that might be photographers, I wanted to mention that. We're just going to go to on my iPad, and I've been out touring around, so I have a lot of images in mine, but let's see, mine isn't in the selfies. You should just be able to go to all photos and find. I came in here yesterday and took a selfie. So here's the one that I took in here yesterday. So find your portrait that you took, and it will place on the canvas a little bit small. And what you want to do is you want to fill your canvas. You're going to use the same 2-finger gesture. This is actually scaling or transform, not zoom. So put 2 fingers on it and spread your fingers apart, which will zoom it in. And you can use 2 fingers or 1 finger to move it around on the canvas. Now, if your head doesn't touch the top, that's fine. I actually probably want to go a little bit smaller so that I have room to see a background, because we're going to put a fun background behind here. So place your portrait image so you can see your whole head and your shoulders. And this is what we're going to draw. When you're happy with the position of that, you'll tap the done in the upper right-hand corner. Now, there's a couple things we need to do to this layer before we actually start drawing. The first thing is we need to change our layer priority. For those of you that have used Illustrator or Photoshop, you understand layer priorities, stacking order. Right now, our image layer is on top of the draw layer. We want to put it below. So the way you do that is you tap and hold, and the layer will kind of grow in size. Did you see that? As I tapped and held on there, it got a little bigger. So now I can drag it down and release. So the other thing that we need to do is we need to take the opacity of it down so that we can see while we're tracing on top of it. So do a single tap on the image layer, and it'll bring up your layer options. And you see a big opacity slider there. I'm going to take my slider down to about 50%. So it's ghosted back. It'll be easy to draw on top of. And then tap again on the image layer, and that will hide the menu there. Now we're going to draw on the draw layer, and right now our image layer is active. You can tell which layer is active because it's outlined in orange and the name is orange. So tap on the draw layer and it will become active. And now's where we're going to start our drawing. We're going to use the first brush on the left-hand side. Tap on that brush and it'll bring up some brush options. This is where you're going to want to use your pencil now. Because the finger, for those of you that have used a Wacom, I use a Wacom, I'm sure many of you have. it's like you have pressure sensitivity, you feel like an artist. And so I always tell my students, if you don't have a Wacom and you use an erase or a mouse, it's like using a brick to paint with, right? We'll draw using your fingers like using a brick, and using pencils like the stylus, like a Wacom stylus. So let's look at the settings here on the left-hand side. You're probably going to want to draw with a size that's between somewhere at 10 and 20, depending on how heavy-handed you are. To change the size, you tap where size is, and you scroll up, and you'll see the size change. Scroll down, get smaller. So I'm just going to put mine maybe around 15 somewhere. So we're going to practice a little bit. You might practice and decide you want to change it. The next thing we want to do is make sure that we're drawing with a brush that's 100% opaque. So do the same thing with the opacity. Just tap and scroll up, make sure it says 100%. And then we're going to check the color. I find this really odd. Like, I discovered this kind of by accident. It seems like it's black, right? This is our black marker. But if you tap on the color, it's not quite black. I'm not really sure why it defaults to almost black, but not black. So tap on the color, and you get a color wheel, and at the bottom is a luminosity slider. Tap on that and drag it to the left, and that'll take you to a solid black. Now, what you're going to do is trace the features of your drawing, and I'm going to show you a finished one in a second of what that looks like, but I'm going to give you a minute or two to just practice. There's a couple things to keep in mind. If you draw at this zoom factor, it might be kind of hard to see what you're doing. So if you use your 2-finger, pinch and zoom in, I like to draw like way in here, right? You may want to hide your UI, but you don't have to. The other thing, sometimes your palm will draw. So, and I usually try and draw towards the edge of my tablet. So I might draw this glasses here, right? And my hand is setting somewhere on the edge of the tablet. And then when I want to draw the other, I'll move it over so that I can kind of get to it easy. So that's one tip for not having, and you have bigger tablets than I do, so you might find that your palm, I'm shaking, I can't draw and talk at the same time. So see, it really doesn't matter. The goal is to create these closed-in shapes like this, and notice I did it with multiple strokes, which is totally fine. If you have a scratchy kind of style, you can draw that way, but you want to close in as many shapes as you can. So take a couple minutes here to just kind of get used to drawing. How heavy-handed are you? What brush size do you want to work with? Zoom in, zoom out. Couple more things before we actually get into the drawing. If you screw something up and you want to erase it, well, first of all, you could do an undo, which is the, it's this icon up here. So you could tap that to step back. But you could also use an eraser. So right now we're on the marker brush. If you tap on that brush, the top of the brush, that takes you back to all the brushes. This bottom one that shows the transparency grid, that's your eraser. So if you want to erase, you can change to that brush. Tap on the eraser again will take you to the brush settings. The only settings we have for the eraser are the size. So tap on size, scroll down, scroll up to change the size, and then you can erase what you've drawn. So if you put some incorrect marks down, you can use the eraser for that. To get back to your brush, tap on the eraser, takes you back to all the brushes, and select the first brush, and then you can start drawing again. So I told you I was going to show you a gesture. Like, that didn't come out so well. If I'm in this view, I don't have my undo icon, but there's a gesture for that. If you put 2 fingers on your tablet and swipe those 2 fingers to the left, it will undo the last stroke. If you swipe to the right, it'll redo that stroke. So I'm putting 2 fingers on my tablet and I'm swiping to the right. That redoes it. So that's a good tip if you like to draw in this view. It's a good idea to zoom in and out as you're drawing. Now, at a certain point along the drawing, you're going to want to see what it looks like without the photo behind it. You're going to want to check your progress. If you double tap on a layer, it will hide the visibility. So I'll double tap on my image layer, and that's how I haven't drawn very much, but that's an easier way to see the drawing at this point. So occasionally you're going to want to double tap on that image layer to see what your drawing's looking like. Now at this point I would recommend deleting this layer that you've been playing with and start a clean layer, and we'll put some music on, and I'll give you 15 minutes, and I'll pull up one that I have that's finished so you can see what it needs to look like. So to delete a layer, if you want to start over, tap on the layer. You tap on the layer, it brings up the layer options, and you'll see a delete there on the bottom. I'm sorry, Carrie, I couldn't hear you. Oh, keep the two fingers. So I'm zooming out, but I still have my two fingers on my tablet, and then I just move it around.
Oh, so pretend you're pinch and zooming still?
Yeah, as you pinch and zoom, you can move it around. That's a good thing to practice before you get into your drawing. So if you've deleted your practice draw layer and you want to create a new draw layer, tap the plus above the layers here. And this time we'll pick draw layer. And so now you have a fresh, clean draw layer. I'm going to close out of my project and show you, like a cooking show. I've pre-cooked this stage. This one here, I did this last night. So this is what, yours doesn't have to look like mine, and it doesn't have to look like your neighbor's, and I really, really encourage you to use your own style and not worry about what yours looks like compared to mine. But the basic goal is you want to outline the features like a coloring book, because we're going to color the shapes in. Okay, so don't put too much detail because it'll take forever to color it in. And another thing with draw is if you create tiny, tiny little spaces to color in, sometimes it just doesn't want to fill. So, you know, kind of open shapes. If you have long hair like me, it's fun to just kind of create these spaghetti noodle shapes for your hair. And then you can put highlights and lowlights, and it's way cheaper than going to the hairdresser for that. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes. What time is it right now? Okay, fantastic. I'm going to give you about 15 minutes. If we could put some music back on, I think mine's perfect. And I'll walk around the room, see how you're doing, answer any questions you have. Okay, so take another minute, zoom in, so areas to look at. See how my neckline joins up with my hair? A lot of you, your neckline fell just kind of short of that. Or maybe where your top, your shirt line, it needs to hook up with the hair. Otherwise, the shirt and the hair will fill with the same color. Okay, so the goal is to create these separate shapes. Now, if all of your connectors are good and you see something like this, and you're OCD about your drawing, which is totally fine. I admit to it. I often describe myself as having pixel OCD. I guess it doesn't work here because it's vector. But when I see a line that kind of crosses over like that, I'll come in here with my eraser, make it kind of a smaller size, and you know, I'll just let my OCD kick in, and I'll kind of clean these up. Now, a lot of the illustrations that I've done that I showed earlier, I'll be real honest, I didn't do it in an hour and a half because I can't tell you how many hours I spent because I love, hopefully you all got there, right? You feel this really wonderful, peaceful place when you're drawing. A lot of times I'll sit in front of the TV and I'm not watching TV, I'm drawing. And I might spend 5 or 6 hours on one of these because I enjoy that space. So just keep that in mind. We have limited time. The amount of details that we're able to put in this morning are limited because of time. But if you have a tablet, an iPad at home, and you download Draw, you can spend as many hours on it as you want. A couple other things that I should have mentioned in the beginning here is Capture and Draw are free apps, and everything that we're doing here right now, you can do with a free Creative Cloud membership. It does require a Creative Cloud membership, but it doesn't require a paid one. What it does require the paid one for is in the very end, we're going to send these drawings to Adobe Illustrator so that you can actually get the vector art out of the iPad. And that's really the limitation. If you want that vector artwork, you need to have a Creative Cloud paid account. I don't know of a way to get vector out of it without saving a PDF to a Creative Cloud file sharing. That'll give you a vector, but I don't think you have that with a non-paid account. So for those of you that have Creative Cloud accounts already, you're ready to rock and roll with this. Okay. If you haven't done so, double tap on your image layer and check and see how your drawing's looking. Mine's turned off right now. If I double tap on it, it'll come back on. So you can turn it on and off to just kind of get a view of what your drawing looks like. And at this point, we're going to start coloring in our coloring book illustration. So I'm going to go back to my brushes. Now, for this step, it really doesn't matter what brush we use. It doesn't matter what brush settings we use. We're not even actually drawing. We're just tapping and filling. But I want to leave my first brush intact in case I run into an area that I need to fix. I can quickly get back to that brush. So I'm going to pick, we'll just pick the second brush, the tapered brush. It doesn't really matter that it's tapered. So I tapped on that teal colored brush to select it. Notice the orange bar that says it's the selected one. I'm going to tap on it again to go into the settings. And I want to make sure that my opacity is at 100%. So I'm tapping on opacity and I'm scrolling up till it says 100. And then I want to pick a flesh tone color, not teal. So I'm going to tap on color. That brings up the color wheel. But if you tap and drag out, it brings out a color picker. Now my pencil is still attached to my tablet, so I can drag this color picker around. And I'm going to select some flesh tone color. I don't like that. It's too dark. So I'm going to do it again. So tap and drag out. You get a picker, and I want to pick something that's light. It's still too dark, and that's fine because I can go in and edit that color from here. I'm going to tap on that color chip, bring up the color wheel, and slide up my luminosity, and maybe pick a little bit peachier color by just taking this chip in the middle of the color wheel and dragging it around until I get something that I like better. Maybe go lighter. A lighter color is better for this. While we're here, everybody take a second to look up here. I'll just give you kind of a little tour. We're just going to use the wheel, but there are other ways to get to colors in here. If you tap where it says wheel, there is RGB sliders, and there's a history. I've only used black so far, so I'll go back to wheel. If you use Creative Cloud libraries with library themes, you can get to your Creative Cloud libraries from here as well. The libraries, mine is actually on my zoo projects. If we look, the last time I used a library was a library of colors I used for my animal drawings. So if I tap on this, it's going to show me a bunch. These are color themes I've saved in a Creative Cloud library. So you have ways that you can save palettes. But to keep this simple, we'll just go back to picker and leave it on wheel. Now, this part is super easy. We're gonna color fill this. And to color fill, you just tap and hold. And sometimes it doesn't work. There we go. So tap and hold, and it should go out and find the joining points. Everything that's open is going to fill. And this is where you might find where you get a warning symbol that it didn't work. And if you get that warning symbol, it's because you don't actually have a closed-in shape. So go around, don't touch the background, just fill your portrait. You can fill your face with flesh tone. Pick a bright, colorful, you don't have to use the same color you're wearing. Pick something fun for your shirt. And then if you want those low light and highlight look, if you've got long hair like me, you can put browns and gold colors in your hair. So I'm going to spend a few minutes filling my picture in. If you want to pick a different color, go back to the color chip and back to the color wheel and just drag this patch around. Like maybe I want a pink color for my blouse. Then I can tap and hold. Actually, that's like purple. We're going to create a background. If you're following the workbook, or on page 7 where it says create a background. This is where that paper, that capture pattern is going to be used. I use a lot of capture patterns in my drawings because they're like fabulous. Like look around. You can capture patterns just walking down the street in cobblestone or something. Take a picture of it. It can become a texture for your drawing. So I have a library of these, tons and tons of them. I have a library of the ones here to share with you. So we're going to start by creating a solid fill background. We need to create a new layer for that. So tap the plus to add a new layer and pick Draw Layer. So that put the draw layer on top of our portrait. We need to move it below because it's the background. So tap and hold till it grows in size and then drag it down. So the new empty layer is below your draw layer. And to fill the whole shape with a solid background, we're going to use a shape. And I said this in the beginning. I mentioned that this icon right up here, the triangle and the circle, this is where your shapes are. So tap on that. And to start, we're going to use an app shape, the square one, because we have a square canvas. So we'll just tap right there on the square. And that's going to place like a ghosted shape in the middle of your canvas. Use your two fingers, your two-finger pinch zoom, to scale that up until it covers the whole canvas. If you need to zoom out on your canvas first before you do this, if you didn't, I should have told you that. You can X out of this. See how there's an X at the bottom? If I tap it, then I can be back in this view and I can change my, so we want to be zoomed out so you can see the edge of the canvas. And go back to the shapes, pick the square. It remembers where it was. So fill the whole canvas with the square. Make sure, this is important, make sure that the new layer is the active layer. Okay? And then pick a complementary color to what you're been drawing with. Let's see. Pick something fun. I like bright, fun colors. Again, it doesn't matter what brush you're on for this. Pick a color. You want the opacity to be at 100%. The size doesn't matter. Now, how this is going to work is you're going to tap and hold. And it should stamp that shape onto that layer. So I pressed and held, and it filled with the blue color that I had selected for my brush. Occasionally, I was showing somebody how to do this and it didn't work. If you're not getting the fill to work, double tap and that'll create a stroke around it, and then you can single tap inside of that. But hopefully this worked for everybody. After your color fill is done, you close out that shape by tapping this X at the bottom of the screen. Okay. So did everybody, you can see Jesus, did that work for everybody? Okay, great. So now we're gonna add another layer, and this is where we're gonna use that pattern that we captured with Capture. So tap the plus to add another draw layer, and this will add the layer on top of the active layer, so it's in the right position. Go back to the shapes. Now, this time, instead of using an app shape, we're going to use a shape from a Creative Cloud library. So tap where it says My Library, and you should find the shape that you captured at the beginning of this. So tap that to select it. It's too small, so I'm going to use my 2 fingers. Now what's nice about this is you can also rotate it. If you put 2 fingers on your tablet, you can spin it around, you can scale it. So pick another contrasting color for this, or a lighter color, something that's different. And for this, for the custom shape, we double tap. So for the app shape, we pressed and held. For this one, we double tap. And it stamps that. This is so fabulous. You can capture these patterns anywhere you are with your phone, make a shape out of it, and then you have them available in your drawings. And it's vector. It's fantastic. Now, I told you that I had captured all of these ahead of time. So let me show you how you could find those, in case you don't like the one that you took a picture of here. Go ahead and create another layer by tapping the plus. You could do it on the same layer. Putting all of these on their own layer give you more options for blending, which I'm going to show you here in a minute. So create a new layer, go back to the apps, go back to My Library. If you look really close on this menu, at the bottom it says Change Library. It's not really obvious. Like, I didn't discover this right away. But if you tap down here that says Change Library, you should see a second library that I had all these devices set up with. I have a ton of libraries. This is my personal Creative Cloud account. I use Creative Cloud libraries. Actually, my friend Carrie Jansen, who's helping out, has a session later today on Creative Cloud libraries. So I use tons of Creative Cloud libraries. You should have one other library in here that I shared with all of you that's called Make It Patterns. And there should be 10 different shapes in there that comprises all the different papers that I brought here. So if you don't like the shape that you captured, you can try one of these, or you might, what I like to do is stack these up to get some really cool textures. Like, I might use both of these. Pick a different color this time. And then double tap. And then I'll tap the X at the bottom to close that out. So now I have a really fun background happening. I find this is just, I love that I can create this and I don't actually have to draw them. But we can go even further with it. This is pretty awesome, I think. I hope you guys do too. This is just, to me, this is so awesome. But what's even makes it even more fun is that we have blend modes in Draw. So for those of you that use Photoshop and Illustrator, you know what blend modes are. So I like to explore those blend modes. I'm going to tap my darker one here. Single tap on that layer to bring up the layer options here, and notice where it says blend mode normal. If you tap on that, and it even gives you a preview. All the blend modes that you're used to are in here. If you tap and hold in the middle of this, it's a scrolling panel. That's not real obvious because there's no scroll bar. But if you just tap and scroll up or down, you can see all these blend modes, and you can try what happens when you pick something different. Like, I like overlay. It's giving me a nice teal color. If I want to back out of this, I'm going to tap here where this caret is. And I could also maybe adjust my opacity if I want something more subtle. So I'm going to do that on both of my patterned backgrounds here. I'm going to try a different blend mode on this one as well. I like overlay for both of them. Overlay is like the magic sauce for blending. I use it all the time in Photoshop. So what do you think? Isn't that fun? I love this. All right, we've got 15 minutes left, which doesn't give us a ton of time for the shading. So I'm going to show you some shading techniques, and we'll. I want you to be able to get these drawings off of the iPad. So we're going to go through this a little bit fast. But right now, I have a flat colored drawing, which you might be super happy with your flat color illustration. But if you want to build up some shading, there's a couple ways that you can do that. I'm going to tap my draw layer at the top to make it active so that when I tap the plus to create a new draw layer, it puts it on top of that. So it's always going to put it on top of the active layer. And then I'm going to change the blend mode of this to overlay. That's not going to do anything yet because I haven't actually drawn on it. And then I'm going to pick my, my third brush, the wide marker one here, and set the color to white and set the opacity really low, maybe 20%. This is going to be to put some highlight shape. I'm going to double tap my background layers and my draw layer to hide them, and double tap my image layer to see it so I can actually see the highlights that were in that photo. And I'll use it kind of as a guide. Like I might draw a highlight on my chin here, and maybe one on my nose. You know, maybe add some cheek ones. You can do something more sketchy like this. And then to see how that's actually blending with the drawing, I'm going to double tap on my drawing, and you'll see it's pretty subtle. Depending on your flesh tone color, it might be too harsh. If you go over it like another time, it builds up. See, so we can kind of paint in brighter highlights. And if you want to put highlights in your hair, if you have long hair, this tapered brush is great for hair strokes. So again, I'll set this to white, set my opacity down really low, and then I'll just paint in some hair highlights. Because that's a tapered brush setting, we get kind of the pointy ends to it. So I told you we don't have a ton of time for this. Just going to add a few highlights. Well, we can do the same for low lights or shadows on this overlay layer by picking a darker color. Let's say we pick a brown. I can put some low lights in my hair. And this one is really subtle. I'm only seeing it over the darker colors to begin with. I'm going to go back to my wide brush here and pick a dark brown. And then I could maybe put some shading under my neckline here. And if I want to use my photo as a guide, I'll double tap on my draw layer so that I can see where the shading actually is. So again, this is kind of a stylistic thing. You may really like this. Well, I saw a couple of people in the room actually doing their drawing earlier, kind of drawing like this to begin with. So if you like that kind of watercolor marker look, this is how you would do that in Draw. Okay, what time is it? So I'm gonna move. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to move on here. I'm just gonna show you one more. The shadows that I've created here are really, really subtle. There's another way that we can add some layers of depth by adding another layer, another draw layer, and setting this to multiply. Because it's multiply, it's going to build on itself. If I pick a flesh tone color and draw with multiply, it's actually going to multiply over itself and very subtly will darken that down. So this is a great way to build up some shape. All right. You could use this for the sunglasses too. Draw doesn't have gradients. So you kind of have to fake it if you want like a gradient look on your glasses. If I take this blue color and and I draw, I just paint in this shape. Looks like I got an errant mark there, but that's fine. Then I could go across it again, and then I can go across it again and just kind of build up a gradient look on those glasses. Again, this layer is set to multiply, and that's why this is working. I'm multiplying the blue color back over top of itself. So we have 10 minutes left. I'd like you to all send your drawings to the computers that are at your stations. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. Hope that the Wi-Fi, they promised me the Wi-Fi is like super duper powerful here and it's going to work for everybody. I'm going to double tap my background layers because I want to see everything. So this is my finished illustration. The beauty of this is that I can send it directly to Adobe Illustrator on a computer as long as the stations are logged into the same account, which yours all are. So my laptop that I have here is logged into my Creative Cloud account, and my iPad is logged into my Creative Cloud account. So I'm going to tap this send icon here. So everybody do this, tap the send icon. And the first option says Adobe Desktop Apps. Select that. And we're going to send it to Illustrator. Now this is kind of important information. If you want the vector, send it to Illustrator. If you send it to Photoshop, it's going to create pixels. So we want to send it to Illustrator. And cross our finger that it opens on your computer. And I think this is going to take a few minutes. Thank you for coming and attending the session. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day or 2 days if you're here for both of them.
Thank you to Theresa.
Thank you to my TAs for helping you.